All right, good morning, Henley Middle School. It's lovely to see you. We're gonna do some judge introductions, and then we'd like to hear who you are and your teachers, and then we'll get moving on the hearing. I'm Jen Howell. I'm the co-executive director of Virginia Civics, the home of the Virginia We the People program. I'm very excited that you're here with us today.
My name is Tom Tinder, and I'm an attorney in Charleston, West Virginia.
Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Caudillo, Senior Advisor with the White House Hispanic Prosperity Initiative in Washington, D.C., and looking forward to your presentation.
And you are?
Hi, I'm Jackson Davis.
Hey, I'm Lucy Shadle.
I'm Harper McLean.
I'm Samuel Rowanhill, and our teachers are Miss Beauchene and Miss Corey.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to be asking question number 1 today. So I'll read the full question, then time will start whenever you're ready. In the Virginia plan, James Madison proposed proportional representation in both houses of Congress. The delegates rejected Madison's proposal in favor of the Great Compromise. What is the Great Compromise and how was it justified? Do you think the founders' justification is acceptable today? Why or why not? What are the advantages and disadvantages of equal representation in the Senate? What are the advantages and disadvantages of changing the Senate to proportional representation?
The Great Compromise was an agreement signed between the framers regarding America's current very flawed government. You see, the primary reason why this compromise was considered to be so great was because of the way it handled the problem of representation that its 2 earlier predecessors failed to solve. The Virginia plan, written by James Madison, heavily favored the larger states, proposing 2 houses of Congress, both with proportional representation. In response to its rejection, framers from smaller states proposed the New Jersey plan, yet another one-sided document written by William Patterson. The New Jersey plan suggested 1 house of Congress with equal representation. However, it was denied. Both sides couldn't seem to produce anything that wasn't directly biased to the representation of large or small states. That is, not until the Great Compromise broke through the unproductive debates and solved what seemed unsolvable. By making the Senate equal and the House of Representatives proportional, both sides got what they wanted, and because of that, it was adopted on July 16, 1787, on a slim but understandable 1-vote majority. But times have changed, and we have to ask ourselves a very important question now. Is the compromise that was so great then just as acceptable hundreds of years later?
The Great Compromise keeps American citizens in U.S. territories from benefiting from the rights and representation promised to all Americans. Because of this, our territories go unrepresented in most of the voting aspects of Congress, which leaves them unable to effectively express their opinions through Congress. D.C. is an example of this. With almost 700,000 citizens, more than Vermont and Wyoming, D.C. suffers from a lack of representation. For example, Congress has a lot of say over budgeting. At the start of the pandemic, D.C. received significantly less money to distribute as stimulus checks than any American state did. Puerto Rico is another example, although a much more nuanced one. Consider America's highly controversial response to Hurricane Maria back in 2017. The death toll in Puerto Rico reached almost 3,000. Many people believe that the response would have been different if Puerto Rico had the same representation as a state. The Great Compromise serves the states quite nicely, but America is more than the 50 states, and the Great Compromise is 100 years outdated.
The House of Representatives and the Senate use different methods of representation. The House uses proportional representation and the Senate uses equal representation. The Constitution states that representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to the representative numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed, when talking about the House of Representatives. An advantage of equal representation is that small states can't be taken over by bigger states, but this could be seen as a disadvantage too. Bigger states could say that they have a bigger population, so equal representation isn't representing the whole population of that state.
As many people grow dissatisfied with our current government, some are proposing that we change the Senate to proportional representation. This would majorly shift the balance of power in the Senate, for better or worse. A proportional Senate would more fairly represent states by giving each state an amount of senators based on its population. Currently, Wyoming gets the same amount of senators as California, which has nearly 70 times as many residents. Proportional representation ensures that votes in California are not less valuable than votes in Wyoming. A proportional Senate also protects popular bills from rejection by low population states with too much power. But as with all plans for the future, proportional representation has its own set of problems. By valuing each state by its populace, It greatly reduces the power of small population states in the Senate. This means larger population states can make laws affecting smaller states without smaller states having the power to oppose them. The Senate was created to avoid that possibility. In fact, the framers wanted to elect the two houses differently so they would have separate interests, splitting the power of Congress. Proportional representation weakens those checks and balances. Overall, proportional representation could modernize a centuries-old system, but it also goes against the very model the US government was built on.
Wonderful, thank you. We have some follow-up questions for you now. You said that the Great Compromise passed by a slim majority, but you also said in your opening that the Great Compromise kind of gave everyone what they wanted. So why did it only pass with such a slim majority? What was some of the opposition to it?
Well, I mean, at the time, we do need to take into mind that they were rewriting basically the whole government. The Articles of Confederation failed them, and they were trying to make it a lot stronger. So, but another thing is, all of these framers have their own beliefs and their own wanting to do things that they wanted to do. And we know, especially with politicians, a lot are very stubborn, and it's hard to give up, especially when you have a blank canvas, right? You're trying to build something up, build something great that goes for all of your ideals as a person and as a country. Sometimes it's hard to put aside the things that you want in order to try to see the whole picture. And I think the Great Compromise actually did pretty well, because just knowing about how argumentative and how diverse all of these framers were acting, it was able to find a middle ground. And though it was only a 1-vote majority, it's understandable based on the fact that the whole government was in stake, and it could have been great or it could have not been great.
You mentioned about the 1 vote and the Great Compromise and that politicians are stubborn. So we currently have 2 major political parties. Should we have, or shouldn't we have 3 or 4 or 5 major political parties so that they would have to compromise to get anything accomplished?
I think that it is important to have more than 2 political parties. You see in elections, Democrats and Republicans are the most represented when it comes to elections, and that means that third-party candidates don't really have a chance to win elections, and most of the time they don't get many votes whatsoever. And I think that it's important to just, instead of focusing on political party, maybe focus on just getting diverse opinions and diverse statements through politics, instead of just what Republicans think and what Democrats think, because it's not just that. There are people who are a little bit more right, a little bit more left, people who are centrist. And I think that it's important to have a mix of all of those people, because it is a spectrum, and just putting two very different sides of the spectrum isn't going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with Harper. And also, I think that at this point, like in our society, it would actually be very difficult to introduce like a strong third or fourth party into our system, just because like no one wants to be a part of a party that always loses. Like even if you don't fully agree with the Democrats or the Republicans, a lot of people are going to pick one just so they can be at least somewhat heard, like just so some of their views can be heard, even if they might be more aligned with the Green Party. Just, yeah.
Yeah, and if we are going to add some strong parties that actually can do things, I think it would have to be relatively soon, because it's going to be so hard in these years. And we've seen that these 2 primary parties, it's forcing people to choose sides necessarily, when before it could just be like, well, I don't agree with all of this. And not only are you choosing sides and maybe voting for things that you don't necessarily agree with, but also it's really easy when you're already chose that side to people influence you in that way. So now you're getting more right or more left, depending on if you lean right or more left. And that's really not great in some reasons. And though it's easier to make compromise because we don't have so many different opinions, I think it's more about the people, and it's more about them being able to vote and do things that they necessarily want than to have to deal with it after the fact. If you're going to try to get something done, you want to get it done in the election and not when you need it to happen. Plan ahead.
You discussed it earlier during your presentation about the advantages and disadvantages of equal representation, proportional representation in the Senate. But from your opinion, if you were in charge and you had a chance to make the change or not, should we change the Constitution to make representation in the Senate based on population? Why or why not?
So personally, if I was in charge of this, I would keep the Senate in equal representation, because I believe that part of America that we need to keep is, I don't think that it's good to have a strong majority in our system of government, because when you have a really strong majority that's always the majority, that makes strong like leaders, and then that could make strong like dictators. Like it will like snowball effect. And even if you're in the minority, you still like, your voice deserves to be heard, even if you're not like the majority. Also, the way that people think a lot of times is like, it's really sad to say, but a lot of people have a very us versus them mindset. So when we have two like political parties, a lot of people think like, oh, that's not my party, that's the enemy. So if we had one party that was so much bigger than the other one and had all the power, then that party could oppress the smaller party, which is not America. It's not what we want.
While I agree with Lucy, I don't think I have as strong as a opinion on this. I do think that the Senate works as with equal representation, but I do sometimes worry about how California is getting the same representation as states with very, very, very small population. I wouldn't change it. And I know that we could change it. I don't see a reason to change it, but I could see why other people do, because that is, affecting how bigger states get representation.
All right, let's bring it home a little bit here. So let's think about Virginia specifically. So how is Virginia affected? What advantages or disadvantages does equal representation in the Senate have for Virginia and for how you personally feel represented in Congress?
Well, Virginia is a larger state than like the majority of states in the Union. So Virginia is actually kind of like Virginia would probably benefit from proportional representation more than a lot of other states. I mean, I feel like a lot of times Virginia is represented in Congress, but it could be represented more if we switch to proportional representation.
All right, great job, guys. I think your opening statement was incredible. I think you guys did a fantastic job putting that together. You had some insights in there that I hadn't heard, and moving into the follow-up period, you had some insights there that I hadn't heard that show a clear mastery of the topic. So in your answer about political parties, and you're talking about how parties are making political views more extreme, that is a very insightful comment. And I think that shows that you guys have really been thinking through these topics, not just reading words on a page and memorizing them, but you read them and you're thinking through them sort of to their logical end. And I just really like the way you guys thought through and reasoned through your arguments. If I had one suggestion, just to strengthen your presentation, maybe particularly in the follow-up, have a few more examples to back up some of the opinions. You have, like I said, solidly reasoned opinions, and just a few more examples in there would really help to bolster that. But overall, I really had a great time talking with you this morning, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Tom, or Emmanuel, sorry, you're next.
I always commend you on a great job today. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for the insight you brought on topics like the territories, how equal representation and representation of the Great Compromise, doesn't really affect those with who, because they lack representation in the first place, like DC, where that's a huge thing going on right now with the statehood movement right now. With Puerto Rico, you're right, with what happened with the Recovery Acts of Hurricane Maria. And so I thought that was great. I love that insight about the strong majority and how sometimes that could be bad because it cascades this. That shows great critical thinking. You're thinking outside the box in regards to the material here. And that is what this People's For allows for you to delve much deeper into that. So I commend each of you. I commend the passions you're bringing into this presentation as well, and the great conversations and their discussions that we've had. So I commend you on that. So congratulations, good job.
Just have a couple quick comments. I was very much impressed with your opening 4-minute presentation. You did something that we lawyers are taught in law school, and that is when you're trying to make a point, you tell a story. And you told a 4-minute story that responded to each and every one of the particular questions that were required of you and that were read to you by Jen. So I just really was impressed with that opening presentation. Well researched, well done. And I thought your answers were good to our particular questions. But I would want to emphasize one point to you, and that is, when we ask you a question, don't think, oh, what is that person looking for? Or is there maybe a right answer to that question? Or I don't want to say a wrong answer. When we ask you that question, just go shifting through all the knowledge and the research you've done and provide us with your opinion, because there is no right or wrong answer. It's just your opinion. Can you back it up? And certainly you have the knowledge and the understanding to back it up. So I just commend you all for the great presentation that you made here today. Look forward to talking with you tomorrow, and just state to you as strongly as I can, please continue to be the leaders in your school and in your community and in your state that you clearly demonstrate, so that we will have an even brighter future with you in those leadership positions. Thank you very much. Congratulations to you, and good luck.